Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Tea with Che and Shai. I'm joined by Chaitanya Kamandori, political strategist, fresh off his Che Day appearance on The Beat with R.A. Melber, where he had an epic rap battle from the DJ from the 206. And I, of course, am Shai, a porn D-list YouTuber. Apologies, Che. You and I just had an excellent half-hour discussion on the post policy party of the Republicans, but due to technical difficulties, it did not record. So
Yes.
we're just going to quickly recap what we talked about the connection of populism and politics and pop culture.
Yeah. And so what I was just saying was if you look at Bolsonaro in Brazil, Modi in India, Erdogan in Turkey, etc., Urban in Hungary, these are just examples of many, Berlusconi in Italy. These toxic populists do spend a lot of energy and time talking about pop culture. And they do it for two specific reasons. One is it actually does make news and it helps distract from the lack of policy. And the second is that it actually has proven to be a very effective button that can press, specifically among older voters. And it can serve as a stand-in for kind of disapproval of an entire society. So older voters who look at the popular culture of today and think those millennials are just crazy, and then the policies that the millennials like then become disapproved because we don't like the TV shows that they like, etc. And so that's kind of something very much that is a hallmark of populism around the world. Is pop culture commentary, pop culture discussion, mostly pop culture criticism. So that's just a really big factor. One thing I didn't mention, though, that I always kind of thought was a factor with America is I do think the GOP really does feel the fact that Hollywood doesn't like them. I think that's something that I think that's the approval of Hollywood is something that they very much would long for. It's something that they would very much enjoy and love. And I think the fact that Hollywood is kind of not their friends or not their fans, I think that's something that really bothers them.
Wow, it's almost like conservatives conducted a witch hunt of communists in Hollywood in the 1950s.
Right. Yes, exactly. It's almost like that. I mean, I don't think that liberals are as bothered by, say, like the fact that so much of sports is conservative. You know,
Right.
I don't think that they're that worried about the same thing. Um, but I do think that the GOP is very much upset about the fact that Hollywood is so. I think that's something that they definitely
Yeah,
work.
I mean, liberals are perfectly fine with sports conservatism. I mean, plenty of liberal sports fans. How else can liberals connect with their fathers?
Right. And well, I also think that's kind of odd because I think that like LeBron and the NBA, for example, feel to me like almost there's no Republican fans. I think that's the sport has become very, very liberal. I think soccer, for cultural reasons, is kind of a liberal sport.
Mhm.
I think tennis, for cultural reasons, has become a very liberal sport. But I do think that is, I think, a factor as well. That's something that we didn't talk about before.
Right, right. Another time we'll have to touch on the history of populism. You had a great monologue about Andrew Jackson and uh, Jennings Bryant
Right.
and
I
the
mean,
origins of populism in America.
yeah, I think the thing to think about is that the Democratic Party is the party of Franklin Roosevelt. That's the party that we now have. But if you think about the party before Roosevelt, it was a very different party. And William Jennings Bryant, of course, was a three-time loser. He was a populist. But his losses led John Dewey and many other intellectuals to say, we can't have politicians writing policies anymore. We need to have professionals do it. And so Roosevelt, for example, had the brain trust of that. And the job of politicians is to sell policy, not to make it. So
Right,
that's something that is
right.
something.
Well, you ended your segment on R.A. Melber with a great 8 Mile analogy,
Yes.
comparing hardworking rabbit to the hardworking Democratic Party. Do you want to briefly touch upon again the works of Curtis Hanson,
Yeah, I mean, Curtis Hanson, a great filmmaker, did The Bedroom Window, which I think we talked about with Steve Gutenberg's Piranha's performance. I
which I had
believe
never heard of?
he did the Hand That Rocks a Cradle, I believe, and then The River Wild with Meryl Streep, which is an underrated. action movie, and then directed a masterpiece, L.A. Confidential, one of the great American movies.
Right.
Then another very great film called Wonder Boys in 2000 with probably Michael
Yes.
Douglas' best performance. Then he also did 8 Mile, and then he followed up with a movie called In Her Shoes, which I always was a fan of, with Cameron Diaz and Tony Collette, a good romantic comedy.
Right. All
So,
right. Well, again, apologies for uh, losing the spilling grape soda on the tape footage for uh, for the last taping, but this is a brief little tea with Che and Shy. I'm having peppermint tea. I'm sure Che is having a similarly refreshing beverage.
yes.
Um, but thank you for everyone watching. Have a good night. Take care.